All right, so this is Ninth Lit, and we're on page 143. This is the scene where the three common soldiers interact with Henry. So everybody ready? Everybody settle down?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to start with Court. Are you Court?
No,
Or Bates?
I'm Bates.
Okay, then you're Court.
Brother John Bates.
John Carter, you
What?
just pay attention. You don't need to worry about
That
it.
was court.
Judge Walker, I don't want
John
to
Carter?
distract
I
you.
thought
No,
that was him.
no,
John Carter?
he's doing it.
Oh, yeah. Why are you talking to me?
You're disrupting.
You're disrupting the entire class.
Let's go.
Brother John Bates, is not that morning which breaks yonder?
I think it be, but we may have not great cause to desire the approach of the day.
Now notice the difference in what Bates just said and what we saw with the French. Oh, I wish it were morning, such a long night.
Oh, I see.
Morning.
These are soldiers.
Yeah, they're talking about, the French are talking about, man, it's such a long night, I just can't wait to fight. And here's Bates, we have no great cause to desire day, because he knows they're gonna be fighting this battle. William.
We see yonder the beginning of the day, but I think we shall never see the end of it. Who goes there?
A friend.
Under what captain serve you?
Under Sir Thomas Erpingham.
A good old commander and a most kind gentleman. I pray you, what thinks he of our estate?
Even as men racked upon a sand that looked to be washed off the next tide.
He hath not told his thought to the king.
No, nor it is not meet. Nor it is not meet he should. For though I speak it to you, I think the king is but a man as I am. The violence smells to him as it doth to me. The element shows to him as it doth to me. All his senses have but human conditions. His ceremonies laid by, in his nakedness he appears but a man. And though his affections are higher mounted than ours, yet when they stoop with the like. They stoop with the like wing. Therefore, when he sees reasons of fear, fears as we do. His fears, out of doubt, be of the same relish as ours are. Yet, in reason, no man should possess him with any appearance of fear, lest he, by showing it, be disheartened his army.
So what's ironic about the whole little speech he gives right there?
He's the king.
So we call it dramatic irony. He says, I think the king is but a man as I am. See, we know something that Court, Bates, and Williams do not know, so that creates the irony. He says, the violet smells to him as it does to me. So he and I are very much alike.
Oh, so they don't know he's the king?
That's right.
Okay.
That's where the irony comes in. We know it, but the people in the scene do not know it.
In one of my favorite movies, A Little Chaos, the King of France, this guy is in the garden because his wife died, and it's just a small garden, and the point of the whole scene where he's dressed down almost in regular clothes, and someone comes in, they have the most heart-to-heart conversation of the movie because he's not the king. So I almost think in this, because he's not dressed in his king, because they don't know that he's king, they can have a more heart-to-heart conversation, and his words can be more inspiring and uplifting, I think.
And that's one of the themes of the book for Henry, is that because I'm the king, I don't get to do these things. Because I'm a king, you can't approach me. So the only way he can become kind of a real normal person is to do something like this, is to get down on their level. Bates.
He may show what outward purse he will, but I believe, as cold as night as 'tis, he could wish himself in Thames.
Thames.
Thames. Where?
Thames, Thames.
It's like the river.
Right.
In Thames up to the neck.
Thames.
Thames, is that Thames?
I've always heard it pronounced River Thames. I've
No,
always
it's
heard it
always
pronounced
been
Thames.
pronounced the River Thames.
Are you really,
And so I would, he were, and I by him, at all adventures, so we were quite here. Just so we were quit here.
Henry.
By my troth, I will speak my conscience of the king. I think he would not wish himself anywhere but where he is.
Then I would he were here alone. So should he be sure to ransomed and may many poor men's lives saved.
I dare you say you love him not so ill to wish him here alone. Whosoever you speak this to feel another man's mind, to feel other men's minds. Methinks I could not die anywhere so contented as in the king's company, his cause being just and his quarrel honorable.
Underline that. His quarrel, his
So
cause
he-
being just and his quarrel honorable.
He's basically talking up himself, right? Saying like,
Yes.
the king's actually really great, and saying that his quarrel is honorable.
Right, and they disagree with that. So the whole argument they're gonna make here over the next couple of pages is this a just war? I believe you had that conversation in history recently. Is this a just war? And he's arguing that it is, but he's also saying that, well, it doesn't really matter. They're saying, what if we die in an unjust war? Are we gonna go to hell? If we die in an unjust war, does that make us unjust? And Henry is arguing, no, it doesn't. The king is not responsible for your salvation, nor is a teacher.
I mean, all they're doing is following orders.
That's right. And he's arguing that, well, you'll hear his argument here, but they're just following orders, and,
I see, but he's saying that it's more than that it's like actually worth fighting for, not just
well,
following.
he thinks it's a just cause. He's not saying it's unjust, but even if it were unjust, they're not responsible for his sins. So we'll go back to William.
That's more than we know.
Yea, or more than we should seek after, for we know enough if we know we are the king's subjects. If his cause be wrong, our obedience to the king wipes the crime of it out of us.
But if the cause be not good, the king himself hath a heavy reckoning to make, when all those legs and arms and heads chopped off in a battle shall join together at the latter day and cry all, we died at such a place, some swearing, some crying for a surgeon, some upon their wives left poor behind them, some upon the debts they owe, some upon their children rawly left. I am feared. There are few die well that die in a battle. For how can they charitably dispose of anything when blood is their argument? Now if these men do not die well, it will be a black matter for the king that led them to it, who to disobey were against the proportions of subjection.
Again, Williams is arguing that he's blaming the king. If they should die in battle and anything, our salvation, it's the king's fault. And here's Henry's argument.
So if a son that is by his father sent about merchandise do sinfully miscarry upon the sea, the imputation of his wickedness by your rule should be imposed upon the father that sent him. Or if a servant under the master's command transports a sum of money, be assailed by robbers and die in many irreconciled iniquities, you may call the business of the master the author of the servant's damnation. But this is not so. The king is not bound to answer the particular endings of his soldiers, the father of the son, or the master of his servant, for they purpose not their death when they propose their services.
Okay, underline that or bracket it. The king is not bound to answer the particular endings of his soldiers, the father, his son, the master, his servant, for they purpose not their deaths when they purpose their services. So when the king sends them into battle, he is not intending that they die. He's not sending them in there to die. What's he doing? He's sending them in there to fight, but not to die. Now some of them will die, but that's not his intent.
His intent is to accomplish something.
That's right. So he's not responsible for their particular death. Later he'll point out that he's not responsible for their souls. That's something that they have to take care of, just like you do. When it comes right down to it, there's nobody on earth, but you can determine.
What one's the bracket?
Yeah,
The king is not 161, 62, 63, those ones. Okay, you're responsible in some respects for your soul, not anybody else.
Wait, is this the St. Crispin speech or no?
Not yet.
Okay.
But
This
you
is
may-
like just a one thing, so.
Yeah.
I was just wondering. Besides, there is no king, be his cause never so spotless. If it come to the
Arbitrament.
Arbitrament of swords, can try it out with all unspotted soldiers. Some, peradventure, have come them the guilt of premeditated and contrived murder. Some of beguiled virgins with the broken seals of perjury. Some making the words their bulwark, and have before bored the gentle bosoms of peace with pillage and robbery.
You notice the, what do you call that? Some have on them
those
guilt.
people.
Yeah, what do we
He's
call that?
referring to Pistol and,
Yes, but what do you call that device, where he starts everyone with some, and he says, some peradventure have on them the guilt?
or,
Some of beguiling virgins, some making the war there, some, then a
one second, let me go back to my page. that I-
gerund, and then a phrase.
Yeah, I wanna go back to my page that I, oh,
Anybody remember what that's called?
wait,
It's an afro.
one second,
It is, that's part of it, it's anaphora. Because some. But there's another word for the whole thing. You remember what it was?
I know, that's what I'm trying to find.
Want me to just tell you?
No.
Yes.
Please just tell us.
Then just
Let
consider
Yes,
union.
Let Huck figure it out.
Are we figuring it out?
I'll
Oh,
whistle.
yes, I got it.
I told you.
Oh, never mind, that's not it.
Okay, just tell us, tell us, just tell us.
I'm almost there.
Starts with the letter P.
Parallelism.
Is it parallel?
Yeah.
I said that earlier.
I am so sorry.
It's okay.
I did not hear you. All right, so anyway, I promise you, I've told you, if you incorporated that in your writing, particularly your essay writing, like you have a 3-point thesis, each point is written in the same way, you would be instantly a better writer. Like, a lot better writer. That the reader would, whoa, your teacher would say, that's well written.
I found the page and you define it as several ideas that are of equal importance, like a thesis statement.
Yes, that are written in the same grammatical form. You may continue. Now if these men-
Now if these men have defeated the law and outrun native punishment, though they can outstrip men, they have no wings to fly from God. War is his beetle, war is his vengeance, so that pure men are punished for before breach of the king's law.
You ever thought about the serial killer, or the guy that killed somebody and he gets away with it? Like he never gets arrested for it?
Serial killer?
Somebody like that. There are people like that don't seem to ever pay for their crime. You ever thought about those people? Do you realize, I've often thought of this, is that they're probably in jail right now for some other offense. Like Al Capone. He died in jail because of tax evasion. He was responsible for dozens of people's deaths. He never got directly punished for being a murderer, but he was thrown in jail for some other reason, and he died there.
Wait, then how did they figure out?
Well, they knew he had done it. They just couldn't prove it.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, he was just so good at it. They knew he had done it. They just couldn't prove it. And so, that's what he just said. He said a lot of guys, they've committed these awful crimes, and God uses war to kill them. Like they join the army and they get killed, and that's God's way of bringing justice.
What do you mean they knew that he had done it, but they couldn't prove it?
Yeah.
There wasn't enough evidence,
That's it. They don't have the evidence. I mean, you know this guy did it, but he's so good at eluding the law that they could never prove it in court. So
when was it?
the 1930s in
Oh,
Chicago.
yeah.
Yeah, it was very corrupt. Unfortunately, it probably still is. It has that reputation to this day.
That was
And
like 90s when they had like really good DNA. They could tell DNA really well, so that would be.
yeah, it was long before that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like I saw this thing where like this serial killer had gotten away with it for like 25 years, and then he finally like wrote a letter to the cops talking about it, and
Yeah.
they traced the letter with his DNA back to him. He would have gotten away with it if he hadn't written to the police 20 years later talking about it. Like
Yeah.
basically sold himself,
Yeah,
trying to
they,
like.
it's like they
gloat-
wanna get
gloat.
caught.
Yeah, he was like gloating about it. He signed it like anonymously, but he was like, oh yeah, I did all this stuff, but you couldn't tell who it was, but they traced the fingerprints like on.
Does it remind you a little bit about the fox in the Nun's Priest's Tale? You know, he couldn't help but boast about the fact that he'd taken Chanticleer, and that's what did him in, yes.
I read a story about this one serial killer. I think he did the most killings in U.S. history. He got arrested. They couldn't figure out who he was, and he got arrested for drunk driving, I think. And then they were able to trace it back like 30, 40 years later after the killings, and then he just died in like 2018. So he was only in jail for like 10 years.
Who?
It was like Sam something, I forgot his name, but he did the most killings. And they still haven't found all the bodies that he.
But you could also argue that for all those years he didn't get caught, think about the life you're living. You're almost living, being punished, and you're always looking around. Like, they knock on the door.
Yeah, you always have to watch your back.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of life is that? You're like punishing yourself. You know, it's almost a relief to get caught and be thrown in jail and it's over. But you have to live with the idea that I'm guilty. Anyway, keep going.
Unless you're a psychopath, there's plenty of those.
War is his beetle, war is his vengeance, so that your men are punished for before breach of the king's law, and now the king's quarrel. Where they feared the death, they have borne life away, and where they would be safe, they perish. Then if they die unprovided, no more is the king guilty for their damnation than he was before guilty of those impieties? Impieties, oh right, I see. For the which they are now visited. Every subject's duty is the king's, but every subject's soul is his own.
Underline that. That's basically his argument. If you die tomorrow, today, your soul is your responsibility. You know, you had a chance to get it right.
That's a good quote, actually, because that's true in war. Like, you can only go so far as, like, you know, your life pretty much is disposable by the person commanding you, right?
Right.
If you're drafted into the
I don't have
army,
much, you have a choice about
you're
that.
gonna go to the army,
Right.
but it's all like what you believe as far that, like, yeah.
Yeah.
That was-
You're responsible for your soul, whether you're gonna go to heaven or hell. Every subject is line 183, 82, 3, and 4, so 182. Every subject's duty is the king. And you,
every subject's soul is his own.
right.
Therefore, should every soldier in the wars, it's 181 to, starting at 182, 183. Every subject's duty is the king, but every subject's soul is his own. Therefore, should every soldier in the wars do as every sick man in his bed, wash every mote out of his conscience, and dying so, death is to him advantage. Or not dying, the time is blessed lost wherein such preparation was gained. And in him that escapes, it were not sin to think that, making God so free and offer, he let him outlive that day, to see his greatness and to teach others how they should prepare.
Williams.
To certain every man that dies ill, the ill upon his own head, the king is not to answer it.
I did not desire he should answer for me, and yet I determined to fight lustily for him.
I myself heard the king say he would not be ransomed.
He said so to make us fight cheerfully, but when our throats are cut, he may be ransomed, and we nearer the wiser.
If I live to see it, I will never trust his word after.
You pay him then. That's a perilous shot out of any elder gun. That a poor and a private displeasures can do against a monarch. You may as well go about to turn the sun to ice, with fanning it in his face with a peacock's feather. You'll never trust his word again. Come, 'tis a foolish saying.
Your reproof is something too round. I should be angry with you if the time were
hear what Henry says, you just kind of, you insulted me. He's talking to Williams. If we had time, I would be insulted if we had time for me to be insulted. And so this keeps going. Williams?
Let it be a quarrel between us. If you live.
I embrace it.
How shall I know thee again?
Give me any gauge of thine, and give me any gauge of thine, and I will wear it in my bonnet. Then, if ever thou darest acknowledge it, I will make it my quarrel.
Here's my glove. Give me another of thine.
There.
Okay, they exchange gloves.
Is this like a royal glove of King Henry?
Probably not, it would give it away, so.
But is there some way of knowing that it's like special?
That wouldn't work. He's trying to make sure he doesn't recognize who he is. So my guess is that it's just an ordinary glove. They're exchanging gloves. So tomorrow, or did he say tomorrow? After the battle, whenever after the battle, and they run into each other, they'll continue the argument.
I see.
They'll know who it is because they can't recognize each other in the dark. All right, Williams.
This while also wearing my cap. If ever thou come to me and say after tomorrow, this is my glove, by this hand I will take the box on the ear.
So he's going to slug him. Williams is going to slug Henry.
I'm just confused what's happening. They're exchanging things to recognize each other in the
So
future.
that Williams says, when I see you tomorrow, I'm going to give it to you. Because they were arguing over the king.
What if they don't survive?
Well, that's what he says. Let it be a quarrel between us if you live.
So it's kind of like incentive for them to come back from the war, or from the
The
battle.
incentive is not to die.
That's what I was saying.
Sure.
It's like your main goal in war is to not die.
I know, but like sometimes you want like
There's some of it is.
hope, you know, like something to like come back to.
Maybe, yeah.
If ever I live to see it, I will challenge it.
Thou darest as well be hanged.
Well, I will do it, though I take thee in the king's company.
Keep thy word, fare thee well.
Be friends, you English fools, be friends. We have French quarrels enough. If you could tell how to reckon.
Indeed, the French may lay 20 French crowns to when they will beat us, for they bear them on their shoulders. But it is no English treason to cut French crowns, and tomorrow the king himself will be a clipper.
Okay, now he's alone again. Everybody's leaving
Is
and
this the
Henry.
St. Crispin speech?
Not yet.
Upon the king, let us our lives, our souls, our debts, our careful lives, our children, our sins, lay on the king. We must bear all, O hard conditions, twin born with greatness, subject to the breath of every fool whose sense no more can feel but his own ringing. What infinite heart's ease must kings neglect that private men enjoy, and what kings have privates have not too, save ceremony, save general ceremony. And what art thou? Thou idle ceremony? What kind of good art thou that sufferest more immortal griefs than do thy worshippers? What are they rents? What are they comings in? O ceremony, show me but thy worth. What is thy soul of adoration? Art thou aught else but place, degree, and form, creating awe and fear in other men, wherein thou art less happy being feared than they in fearing? Why drinkest thou oft instead of homage sweet, but poison flattery? Oh, be sick, great greatness, and bid thy ceremony give thee cure. Thinkest thou thy fiery fever will go out, with titles blown from adulation?
Okay, pause just a minute. Everybody's gone, he's alone, and he's saying, he's just been with these common men, and he says, I wish I had the peace that they have. These people have, they're great calm. They don't have to worry about the things I do. So this entire speech is about, what's the difference between me and them? Ceremony. Basically, I got a crown, I got a scepter, I got a throne, but outside of that, I'm just a person like they are. And I have to worry about everything, and they don't. There's a famous speech by his father, Henry IV, in that play, when he's going to bed one night, he says, you know, I have this big bed, the nicest room, quiet, calm, smells good, everything, and yet I cannot sleep. Whereas the peasants in these little huts down there have got smoke and fire and bees buzzing, flies buzzing. They sleep great. And he pictured this young boy on a ship in a storm. You know, the ship's going like that, the storm's blowing. This young man is at the top of the ship. You know, he's climbed one of the masts, and he's asleep at the top of the ship while the ship's going like this. He says, why is it that he can sleep like that and I can't sleep like this? You ever wondered about that? Ever wondered about your sleeping conditions, how great they might be, and yet you cannot sleep. You get toss and turn. You think, you've seen stories about soldiers lying in a battlefield fast asleep, you know, but you got this great bed. That's what Henry's father is talking about, and it's interesting that Henry says the same thing here. Just like his father, he said, man, I'd be a lot more peaceful if I wasn't a king. What's so big deal about being a king? Yeah.
Well, it also might have something to do with the fact that, like, they really need the sleep. Whereas, like, if like you're just, you know, on the battlefield, you're worn out, so you take wherever you can to go to bed because you're worn out, or on the ship because you're always working. So anywhere there is that you can sleep, you sleep. Whereas the king is working, but like still he's not doing stuff that might physically tire him out.
And you add, very good point, and you add the mental anxiety to being the guy in charge. You know, this is his operation, and he's worried to death. But you're absolutely right. I always sleep better, don't you, when you've had a physically busy day? I mean, your physical fatigue is something we try to avoid, and yet at night, that's what we want.
It's like I slept on the floor, like I'm so tired after getting.
I've done that. I did that as a kid one time. Literally slept on a hardwood floor all night like a baby.
You sleep on the desk every day.
So that's true. He's practical.
Talk about harsh sleeping.
Yeah. When I retire, I think I'm gonna invent a desk that also reclines into a bed, so that my students who are so uncomfortable sleeping on those hard desks, they
They
can
already
now
have inflatable
just.
binder covers that you can.
Oh, no.
They're like little
Really? Oh, don't tell them
covers.
that. That's interesting. Then have the reclining desk. Okay. That's gonna be for you. I'm gonna dedicate it to
The
you.
perfect way to like rest your head on your hands where it's like this comfy, squishy.
So you feel like right there, like on your
Yeah.
wrist, like.
And yet at night, in a nice bed with a big, nice pillow, you can't sleep. Go figure.
So,
You may continue.
Command the heat of it. Now, no, thou proud dream that playest so subtly what the kings propose. I am a king that find thee, and I know 'tis not the balm, the scepter, and the ball, the sword, the mace, the crown, the imperial, sorry.
Intertissued
The
robe.
crown imperial, the sword, the mace, the crown imperial, the intertissued robe of gold and pearl, the farcade, is it?
Title, farce, or farcid.
Farcid title, oh yeah, farcid title, running for the king. The throne he sits on, nor the tide of pomp that beats upon the high shore of this world. No, not all these, thrice gorgeous ceremony, not all these, laid in bed majestical, can sleep so soundly as the wretched slave, who, with a body filled with vacant mind, gets him to rest, crammed with distressful bread, never sees horrid night, the child of hell, but like a lackey from the rise to set, sweats in the eye of Phobos, and all night sleeps in Elysium. Next day after dawn, doth arise and help Hyperion to his horse, and follows so the ever-running year, with profitable labor to his grave, and but for ceremony, such a wretch, winding up days with toil and nights with sleep, had the forehand and advantage of a king. The slave, a member of the country's peace, enjoys it, but in gross brain little watch the king keeps to maintain the peace, whose hours the peasant best advantages.
And again, it's the same principle about being famous. You're famous everywhere you go, people want to bother you, they want your autograph. You're not famous, but you get the peace of going to a restaurant and people leaving you alone. So, I mean, I understand where the king's coming from. Aren't we happy to just be ordinary? There's a lot to be said about just being ordinary. Erpingham. I'll read it. My lord, your nobles, jealous of your absence, seek through your camp to find you. Henry.
Collect them all together at my tent, all be before thee.
I shall go and do it, my lord.
O God of battles, steel my soldiers' hearts. Possess them not with fear. Take from them now the sense of reckoning. The opposed numbers pluck their hearts from them. Not today, O Lord. Oh, not today. Think not upon the faults my father made in compassing the crown. Richard the First.
Richard body.
I, Richard's body, have interred new, and on it have bestowed more contrite tears than from it issued forced drops of blood. 500 poor I have in yearly paid. 2 twice a day their withered hands hold up toward heaven to pardon blood. And I have built 2 chantries where the sad and solemn priests still sing for Richard's soul. More will I do, though all that I can do is nothing worth, since that my patient penitence comes after all, imploring pardon. Gloucester.
I'll read it, my liege.
My brother Gloucester's voice, I know thy errand, I will go with thee. The day, my friends, and all things stay from me. Why
Okay.
is friends in like brackets?
I think that means that in one edition, like it wasn't in some editions, but in other editions of this play, it is. So, you know, I think that's how they indicate this was. We're putting this here because it didn't appear in this original version or something. All right, so look at your questions. We're going to finish out in just a few minutes here. Look at question 53, and we'll work backwards. All right, question 53. You can see why this is a long act. You can see why we're kind of avoiding the last act. There are eight scenes there. Yeah, there are 8 scenes. We're only on scene 4, so we're only halfway through the act. So it's going to take us probably the rest of the week.
Will we get a study guide for this?
Yeah, and I'll give it to you maybe even tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
I actually haven't assigned the test yet. Next Wednesday, we're going to be at the zoo. So it won't be Wednesday.
Are you coming with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh.
Yes. I'm going to the zoo.
Are you excited for it?
Can't you tell?
He's about excited as majority of
I was avoiding telling a joke about
Remember?
going from one zoo to another. All right, look at question 53. What was the purpose of including that prayer? I had a really good answer for this in another class. Why did it's prayer? When was the last time you actually saw a movie where somebody's praying? I mean, that'd be a Christian movie, right? This is not a Christian play, it's Shakespeare. But he incorporates that. What do you think is the reason? I had somebody answer it correctly. I think is a good answer. He's asking God to help them. So what does that tell you?
What was your question?
What is it? Why does Shakespeare's question
He's nervous,
53?
he's like afraid for he's afraid himself for the outcome.
Well, sure.
Saying like.
But why include it at all? Like that could be something.
Because he genuinely cares about the soldiers. So
The prayer?
Shakespeare was Christian.
Yeah.
It's Shakespeare, probably, it's a good chance he was a Christian, who knows? He might
I
have been.
see, including a prayer.
Yes.
To,
But I would argue, the student said it's to show that God is on the English side.
oh, wow.
She might have, but that's one way to say, see, Henry, look at it, he's praying, asking God to help him. That's just another, as you said, that's another reason to think Henry's a great guy, and God loves us best. That's sort of the implication there. Look at 52. What is Henry's view on the trappings of nobility? that was that whole long speech about the ball and the mace and the crown and the throne and the robe. Remember, that's all I've got. I'd give all that up to have a little peace of mind and can sleep at night. All of it is ceremony.
I see.
All of it is trappings. It's not, it's not worth the worry and the fear and all of that. And we ought to stop there. But the other thing, notice what he says here in this prayer. He says, don't hold, and remember this, don't hold it against me. Guys, listen. Don't hold it against me that my father killed Richard II. Henry's father killed the previous king in order to become king. It's like Macbeth.
Really?
Yeah. You'll have to read the play. Richard II.
Wait, was like learning the learning system like an actual homework assignment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For what? Wait, so do we have to like?
No, we had to.
I'm getting close to
Thank you.
Yeah. How's baseball coming?
Good, yeah.
How'd you do?
Pretty good, yeah.
I mean,